Hi, I'm Charisma, back again with another tutorial on one of my patterns. I'm so excited. I have about 250 published patterns, and I like to see things in a bunch of different ways. Even before I was a designer, I would take a pattern and I would take maybe some traditional pattern and I would change it. I would maybe flip some trees upside down and turn them into flowers. I would use modern colors when maybe they were supposed to be all browns and change everything. So one of the issues that I have maybe is that I love my patterns because I can see them in all sorts of fabrics and designs and everything else, and I'm constantly swatching out fabrics, but I can't obviously make every single quilt 3 or 4 times, but some of my friends and customers can. So one of my really fabulous patterns is called City Windows. And when I originally designed City Windows, I did it with, before I made the sample I should say, I did it with gray and I put all these bright colors in it and it looked very City Windows to me. But then when I decided to make my sample, I decided to use Fairy Frost because it has that sort of sheen to it. It's, you know, this really fabulous line by Michael Miller, and you can get it like very shiny, a little bit shiny, whatever. So I just took all of my Fairy Frost, and my friend Sally offered to help sew this sample for me for City Windows. And she was not excited to sew the sample. She thought, that looks boring to me. I can't get excited about that pattern. But then when she dug in and started doing it, she like really fell in love with the pattern, because when you originally look at the pattern, it just looks like rectangles and some squares and rows, and it does not look like it would be very fun to sew. But what it actually is are 2 blocks. It's just 2 blocks, and they're easy blocks that you can sew together. And then when you sew them together, every other block, they create these rows, and it looks very, you know, kind of random and everything, but it's not. And so once she made the sample, she loved it so much, she decided to take her scraps of, she had a bunch of Kaif fabrics, and she just whacked them all up and made this beautiful blended version of City Windows, as you can see here. So no rules, no attention to color. There was no worrying about where anything landed. So another great use of scraps or a collection that you love. So a new line that is coming out, I think it's out in stores now or being shipped to stores now, is called Let It Snow by Sue Zipkin, I think, for Clothworks fabric. And I happened to get some of these. I did a magazine project that will be coming out, but I took some of my scraps, and a friend of mine made this version of City Windows. And what's really cute about this is that this is just another version of that quilt. You can see here in City Windows that we used black in the background, we used a bunch of colors, we, you know, sort of arranged where those go. This is all very random, but you can see that it's a great way to showcase a line of fabric, because you can see the polar bears and the snowflakes and the penguins, and it just shows all of those fabrics very well. And then we quilted it with snowflakes, and everything just looks great. So it's just a great way to use a collection, showcase the collection, use some scraps. And so I thought I'd show you how to sew those blocks together. You can get all of the information out of the pattern. So I'm using scraps to sew these blocks together, which is just another way to show you how versatile this pattern is, and that you can really use absolutely anything to put this quilt together. So here's block 2, and here's block 1. So we'll start with block 1, where you really just have these 2 large rectangle pieces here, 1 and 2. 1, 2, you can see this one is piece scrappy in this sample, but these are my 2 rectangle pieces. And then you have these two small white sashing pieces, and then you have these two large white sashing pieces. So all we're going to do is sew a white rectangle on the bottom of each of these rectangles. In this case, it doesn't matter, there is no direction. So we'll flip those when we're sewing our block together. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, now I'm going to press these. Okay, and now I'm going to sew my long sashing strips together, which means I just need to flip one of these. And then I'm just going to sew one on either side of this pink one, just to make it easier. And then I'll sew this other rectangle onto that, and then we have our block 1 done. Okay, now that we have those two sashing pieces on there, we're going to go ahead and put our big rectangle on. Look at how easy that was. And now we're going to go ahead and press this to the dark. Okay, block 1 is done. How easy was that? I'm going to tell you that block 2 is just as easy. Okay, so we have our 3 small sashing pieces and our 2 large sashing pieces. So we're going to take our 2 small color blocks here, and we're just going to sew a piece of sashing in between those 2. And then we're going to sew a small piece on either end of this rectangle as well. And I just love it when we start to see things come together. Yay! And now, once again, I'm just going to sew these white sashing strips on either side of that larger rectangle, and then I'll sew this piece on afterwards, just to make sure everything stays. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and sew on this other pieced rectangle set. And you don't have to press right now because we're not sewing over any seams. So we're just going to go ahead and sew that on, and then we'll press all at once. And look at that. Oh, fabulous. Such a great way to use scraps. Okay, and here are our 2 blocks. This is block 2, and this is block 1. And then you're just going to put these together, every other block, and you can see how they link together. And then once you do every other block in a row, it creates that row type look with our city windows pattern. And you can see that some of the smaller squares join with some of the bigger ones, just from the nature of the way that they come together. So that is our city windows quilt. I hope that you enjoyed this video and it gave you a little bit of insight into how easy and versatile this pattern really is. So please share your projects with me at charismascorner.com. I really love to see the things that you guys create. It just makes my job a whole lot brighter. I hope you have a great day. Happy sewing. Bye.